Says officially 2 p.m. So we'll go ahead and begin the meeting, the October 30th meeting for the Facilities Committee. So, can I get the pledge? Thank you, Supervisor Sotelo. Okay, can we get roll call, please?
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Here.
Supervisor Sotelo? Present. All here.
Okay. Can I get an acknowledgement certificate of posting, please?
So moved.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. This seems kind of silly just to go through that when there's only two of us, but I'm trying to follow the procedure. Okay. Do we have any public comments that are not items not on the agenda?
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide us a speaker card. On Zoom, please press star 9 on the raised hand icon. And I have none for, wait, I do have one for general. Mary Dan? No public comment.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go ahead and move on to our regular agenda, and I have been asked by staff that we go ahead and take 5.5 first, so let's go ahead and start with that. And that's we receive information from the library cleanout plan and provide staff direction if desired.
Hello, thank you, supervisors, members of the public, Austin Curtis, County Librarian. So basically, with the upcoming expansion, we're just going to use this time to evaluate our current collection, see which books have been checked out, and which, where we can kind of decrease the collection with books that are no longer circulating. And look for future trends in the collection and basically see where we can increase space for future programming.
Okay. So I'm assuming there is this is the first time I've been aware of this, but is there a weeding out process that the library has? And who are you using to consult that? I was using the verb purge, but I was told it's not purging work.
It's
weeding out.
Typically how it works is if materials haven't circulated in roughly 3 years, we look at them and kind of go from there, look at the condition, look at if it's not popular, and then that's, books are always being written, so that's an area where we can get new books and potentially make room for programming.
And then the availability of electronic resources too should help out quite a bit, I would think.
Yeah, that's one of the areas as well. So for example, a lot of reference is moving online. So, we can always look at turning towards online databases for some of those materials.
Okay. You didn't have any comments. We'll go to public comment. Can you go to public comment for this item, please?
If you'd like to make a comment regarding 5.5, please provide a speaker card in chambers. On Zoom, please press star 9 on the raised hand icon. And I have no public comment for this item.
Okay. So do you have any comments or concerns?
Austin, is this a standard practice that we do consistently on like a normal basis, or is this something that is new? It seems like this would be something that we do every single year, or has it not been done in a really long time? Or maybe give me a little bit of background so I kind of understand. Because I'll be honest, when I saw the agenda item, I was like, oh, this is interesting. We've never discussed this before. And I thought it would have been just kind of a standard practice, so I didn't know it was some. So anyways, if you can give me a little bit of background so I can kind of understand how this works.
Reading of library materials is a standard practice for libraries. Ideally, bookshelf is full, it makes it harder for patrons to browse and find books that they are interested in. And so ideally, bookshelves are only half full. And again, if that's unless it's kind of a classic or award-winning material, a lot of times books, again, they're always being written, and it's kind of the trends are always fluctuating with the community. So we always want to build our collection based on community need. So if books that have been circulated for 10 years, it's kind of a, that space could go to something else.
So when was the last time that we weeded?
We've been leading our collection. It's kind of again, it's been an ongoing process.
So you're just giving us information then on kind of this standard weeding out process. It doesn't sound like, are you looking for our feedback or direction? I guess I'm a little, you just came to tell us how this works. Am I missing something?
No, and that's what I was gonna say, is this something normally the Board of Supervisors, chimes in on? Because I didn't think that it was.
I'm not sure how.
Yeah, yes, please.
Hey.
I think also why this is on here is the prep for the library expansion. There's a lot of cleanup that needs to be done. So I think
Weeding.
weeding. Sorry, you're correct. Thank you. Weeding out the library, and I think this is kind of this is one of their standard things that they do, but we're going to have to expand that even more for the expansion. So the weeding out is going to have to be a little bit more in depth. I think the plan is to get a plan in place, so we're not doing this last minute. Also trying to figure out who will be kind of the lead on it at the library, and then if we're going to have to enlist any volunteers. We have Friends of the Library, I think they're here today as well, but I think that maybe have to be a little bit broader. And then what do we do with this stuff?
Well, that was gonna be my next question, because Friends of the Library is here, and they usually take the excess material, surplus, I guess is what the word would be called, in this sense. If it's in a condition where it's reusable, would it be something that would be donated to the Friends of the Library? Do they even want it? Because I know space is limited for them too. So are they in the conversation?
Typically, they are.
Okay.
Typically, we just folks will go to the Friends to sell, and then we have some other places we're looking at.
Well, it makes perfect sense to me. This seems very common sense. I appreciate you bringing it to us. And, I know you're a new librarian too, so you're probably kind of, I just wanted to make sure you were aware of what was going on. And so I do appreciate that. And I think that, obviously we've got a lot of cleaning up to do of that library. And I'm sure this is the beginning of a very long process, right? I'm sure we're going to need to continue talking about this. I'm sure that at some point, where are we going to put all this stuff as we're looking to build and all those things? So I appreciate you bringing it, and I appreciate the continual weeding out process, because I agree with you. I do think that things change, and books are really hot, and then if they're not checked out for a certain period of time, whatever our policy is on that, it makes sense to me. And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and return back to the normal enumeration. So 5.1, can I get an approval of the minutes for the August 28th meeting?
I move to approve the meeting minutes for August 28th, 2024.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We didn't go to public comment on that. I'm so sorry.
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card. On Zoom, please press star 9 and raise hand icon. And I have no public comment.
Okay, 5.2 then. Now, this is something that's been coming back to the facilities meeting, or the committee, for 3 years now. I'm hoping we're going to get some sort of direction for resolve, or we can give you some direction for some resolve after hearing your presentation. So,
that sounds like a great idea. So Steve Luke, Public Works Administrator, I'll be discussing with us ad hoc items 5.2 and a few others, so thank you. So yes, Rosa Murata, for those folks that aren't aware, it's a parcel that the county currently owns. It's off of Fairview Road. It used to be a site of a preschool, younger care of younger people facility, and now it's the county's property. And so we're here to just discuss next steps with this ad for that site. So, per previous meetings, I think it was a couple meetings ago, this ad hoc gave direction to staff to essentially put the property up for sale. And so what you're seeing up above, I just want to kind of refresh folks on a couple items and features of the site. So the site's about 2.8 acres, 2.9 acres. The land value and structure value are not currently assessed. We did some preliminary appraisals of the property a couple years ago, a year and a half ago, as was just noted. There's 2 structures on the site. One of them could probably accommodate 10 to 12 staff offices if that was the direction of the ad hoc. If it was decided that we should rehab the building, and then there's a smaller facility that could probably house 2 or 3 staff. Both those facilities again were used as kind of like a preschool facility in the past. However, to be discussed today based on current City of Hollister Fire Department negotiations and county staffing needs, the staff is now recommending we go back into pause mode to consider if the county still needs that property either as a future fire station or to perhaps relocate one of our current departments that is in need of a new location. We have a few departments that do need a new location. Something to consider is this is in a FEMA flood zone. The good news with that is the current building is actually elevated. Actually, both of them are elevated. And so it would just be a rehab of the interior building. Way back when I was checking my notes, just to make the current building usable and the site usable, I'll say guesstimated, we did some very preliminary estimates that the cost would be about $400,000 to have county staff be able to use the site. And then we also, based on previous water tests, we'd probably have to add a water filtration unit. But if the county decided to keep this site, I recommend that we actually perform new water testing because there's some potential water issues that need to be addressed with the well on the site. And so now, I'll pause there. I don't know if CAO Ring wants to add more context to that. If that's where we
Sure, thank you. In relation to the fire department, our understanding is it is in a floodplain, and so that wouldn't be an ideal location for a fire station. But it is land, it's usable, it has space, it does have water, it does have power. The water obviously would need to be further tested and filtration, I think that's doable. But it's land, and it's available where we could either use the existing building if it's feasible or potentially leveling that. There are affordable options for buildings that a lot of government agencies are going to now because they can customize them a bit and the cost is a lot cheaper. I think with this Rosa Morada land is that we've already got the land, we've already got power out there, and there is sewer. So those are really big hurdles. Those are big things in order to put infrastructure. So I would hope that the committee could consider looking at it from another option. We do have some departments such as Ag that has a building that is in much needed of repair. And whether we were able to remodel the structure in Rosa Morada or look at bringing in a modular type of unit, I think it would be very cost effective. It is in the middle of an Ag area, so it would be kind of ideal for an Ag department, but depending on what we need and for other staffing, we could consider putting it as another location for other departments as well. There's enough space out there where we could put even a metal structure for storage, because there have been things that we've come up with in the past of having to get our own private storage, and cost with that is also, impact to budget. if we were able to put our own structure, we can manage our own storage and not have to worry about paying, a lease on that. So those are some other things to consider.
I know at one point that, a member of the community reached out regarding a potential site for daycare. And was that plan didn't go anywhere? I mean, what happened with that?
Yeah, on that note, we actually toured the facility with that potential buyer, and they took some notes, and I think they were essentially waiting for the county to put the site up for sale and then make their own determination. But we toured the site with them, and yeah.
I like the idea of having a pause mode option because again, it is land, it's property, it's only gonna increase in value. I'm just concerned this is gonna be a can that we're gonna be kicking around for quite some time, into the future. But I do like the pause mode to really evaluate all of the potential options because, there will be new supervisors on the board, there will be a different majority, and there might be direction from the new board in 2025 to do something affirmatively with that site. So I'll stop talking, and if you have any questions, concerns. Thank you. Public comment on this item for the Rosa Morada input?
If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please provide a speaker card in chambers. On Zoom, please press star 9 or raise hand icon. I have no public comment.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that okay? So I totally support kind of the pause. I was fully on board with selling the property and let's just get rid of it. We're not using it. I think 6 months ago or let's just say a year ago to where we are today, a lot has changed. And I think that right now, the reasonable thing for us to do and the responsible thing for us to do is to take a pause, hold on to this property and figure out what our next steps are, whether it's ag department, whether it's storage, fire, whatever it is. I think we're in kind of limbo with a lot of things and hopefully within a year or so, we'll have a lot more clarity and direction. But at this moment, I think the most reasonable thing for us to do is take a pause.
I would agree to that. I think also too is even with whatever we develop on that land, we could always lease it out, and it could be a little bit of a revenue for the county too. Going through, we can kind of list through the options of what makes the best sense for that property. So we can bring that back at a later time.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the forethought from staff on this and kind of looking to the future for kind of what our needs are. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, so let's go ahead and go ahead and 5.3 then. Steve, I guess is your item as well.
It is. We're going to jump over to Vets Memorial Park and the Bertha Briggs Memorial Youth Center, located on Memorial Drive. Discuss some options for either repurposing the building, demolishing it, or first let me give you a little bit of recent developments. So the county was contacted by Veterans of Foreign Wars, VFW, and the request is that they might like to lease this site if the county is amenable to that. And I'll go through some of the site characteristics in a moment. They also know that they could potentially pursue a grant to refurbish or rebuild the existing structure. And what I've done to the image on the right is provided an excerpt from the 2021 facility master plan. And that master plan essentially examines roughly 16 of our current county buildings as of 2021. For this specific building, it was identified that there was approximately $490,000 of deficiencies of the existing building. The largest one was the HVAC system, pretty much needs to be replaced. That was about a third of the cost, and then just the interior of the building needs to be replaced, and there's some ADA issues, et cetera, et cetera. So the way that facilities master plan works is they come up with a facility conditions index, and they look at what does it cost to rehabilitate versus what does it cost to replace. To rehabilitate was $490,000. To replace, back in 2021 dollars, was the cost of $918,000. So to come up with the facilities index, we take the cost to rehab divided by the cost to replace, and we come up for this building with about 54% of an FCI. Anything over 50%, the report actually recommends that you replace the structure, because if you're gonna be rehabbing 60% of it, and chances are it's only gonna last for so long, you know, with other parts of the building that aren't rehabbed, then that report recommends just replacing the structure. So, question to discuss today, is it feasible for, say, one, the library staff to have offices within a new building to be shared with the VFW? It's about a 1,200 square foot building, so it's not real large. Number two, if the building is rebuilt larger, that might be an option. Because around February of 2026, the library staff's gonna need a place to stay for about a little over a year while the current library is rehabilitated. So we have about a year to figure this out, maybe a little bit more. Alternatively, as CAO just mentioned, we could install temporary portables on this site. There's a pretty decent sized parking lot near the arrow, the bottom part of the arrow. We could easily put a few portables there. And maybe share the site with VFW if we decide to lease it to them, or we just allow them to essentially lease the property from the county and go through that process. So those are kind of the options on the table. I don't know if I left anything out. CAO.
So yeah, just a couple things. So this came to fruition because veterans of foreign wars called and said, hey, can we use that building? And so I started talking to Steve about that, and I'm like, well, we have some other needs. One is we have a library expansion that will be occurring, and putting the library, and I think the discussion was putting the library temporarily in the bottom of the old courthouse that's going to be remodeled at some point. But again, it is land that the county's asset that the county has, property that we have. We could use another type of modular building, level the Briggs building, put another modular type of building. We have other departments. We could always put veteran services out there. Veterans of foreign wars could lease part of it, but we could start with putting the library there. It is next to a school. So we spoke to Manny a little bit. He said that maybe we could talk to the school because there's so many after-school programs that may be kind of an ideal location temporarily for the library. Once the library is completed, then we can put in whoever lease it or put in department people. But it would be a structure that we could use. Again, the benefits to it is it already has water and power, sewer, power, and that. So that's a plus thing. It's just a matter of the building doesn't look like it would be worth to rehab, but it would be a good spot to put something modular or portable. So something to consider.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and go to public comment first on item 5.3 before we bring it back to the board to deliberate.
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card. On Zoom, please press *9 or the raise hand icon. And in chambers, I do have two. Mary Dan.
Hello,
Hello.
good to see you. Hi, Mindy. Hi, Dee.
Hello.
My name is Mary Dam, and I'm Vice Chair of the Boy Scouts of America for San Benito. And just a little history, Bertha Briggs donated that building for use as a youth center for all the youth in San Benito County. And it was used that way for many, many years. And by many, many people. It's a place where youth are able to gather. They can have youth meetings there. They learn from each other. They learn the program that they're in. They learn to be good citizens. It strengthens them. It helps their families. And it goes on for generations and generations. I started using the building probably in, my son's 50 and he was 8. So a long time ago. It was always run when I was with it, not the whole time, but at the beginning for many, many years. A local real estate agent was the one in charge of it. Margaret kid. And she made arrangements for who was going to use it when. When it wasn't being used by youth, then they would rent it out, and they would go through her, and she collected everything, and she took care of it. I guess for the county, I don't know if the county, contracted with her to do that. Every year, all of us that used it, because we all had keys, she had us get together. All of us had to be there on the same day. We had to turn in our keys because the next day the locks were changed. So you couldn't use it unless you came and signed up again, signed another contract with everything that needed to be signed, and chose your dates. If you were returning, you got to keep the same dates if you wanted them or change them, and then if people wanted to add. And so it wasn't just Boy Scouts, the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scout troops using it. Girl Scouts were using it. Little League used it. Any youth group that wanted to have a meeting could, sign up with her to use it. It was free. We didn't pay anything for it. But we did have work days, and there would be work days, and we would have assignments of what to do. Mostly it was outside, because inside, whenever you used the building, you had to clean it. We knew where the mops were. We knew where the toilet brushes were. We cleaned the building every time we used it. And I can say that there were many groups of Cub Scouts that used it. Most Cub Scouts meet twice a month in their little dens, and there were probably 30 dens. Then we would have adult meetings, we had trainings, all kinds of things that were held for youth. It's a very important building. It was sad when it was closed, because by that time, the county had taken it over to facilitate everything, which was a big switch, and not very easy. We never had to turn our keys in. If you had a key, you had a key for life after that. I still have a key. I could go in right now if they haven't changed the locks. We also had, as the district Boy Scouts, we had an office in there. And I have not gone back in to get our stuff out, so I don't know. I mean, we were just locked out, which was sad because we weren't informed, and we had people showing up at 7 o'clock at night with 30 little Cub Scouts, and they couldn't get in the building because it was red tagged. We weren't notified at all. Once I found out about it, then I was able to call all the scout units and let them know, but I didn't know everybody else that used it. It's very, very important. I would like to see a spot like that. Whether it's that building, which would be nice if it could be used. We weren't told ever what was wrong with it, just that it was red tagged. We didn't know if it was something that we could take care of. We could gather people and try to get donations and do whatever needed to be done. Oops.
It's okay. I saw that we were slow to start the clock, so if you want to finish that thought, and then we'll wrap it up.
It's just like, this is a place we belong. Now groups are scrambling to find places where they can have meetings for the youth. There's really no places for youth. And it's very important. Right now we have probably 300 kids in just our program. And they range from kindergarten to 21. So anyway, we advocate to do something. Let us know. Please let us know.
Thank you for your input on that, and I totally relate. We'll go ahead and go to the next public comment, and then I'll share my history with that building as well.
Ella Hanson?
Hello, I am a county employee, full disclosure on the record, but I am here as a member of the public, a community volunteer, and a member of the, I'm very nervous, by the way. A member of the
Relax,
district.
you're amongst friends. Just
Right,
relax.
the district committee, for our San Benito District of Scouts, BSA, along with, Mrs. Gam. I found out about the meeting agenda yesterday, and I immediately reached out to Mary and let her know, hey, this is on, please come. And actually, the last time it came on, I don't remember if it was this committee's item or not, but it came on, a couple of years ago, and I also reached out to her, and she spoke at that time also to let, the county know that this building is very important. I have been involved in scouting for 10 years, and, I get emotional because it's such an important program for the community. And to have the building taken away, it was very challenging. we had to scramble to find alternative meeting places. We actually met in the hospital administration building for a while. We had members on our committee that worked for the hospital, so that was an option. But when that building got taken away, it was very challenging. You had a number of dens and packs that, and troops that weren't able to meet. We had to figure out where we were gonna go. So we had to open our homes, and find alternative meeting places, and because of the closure of the building. So I urge you to consider that, before any decisions are made to repurpose the building. Because if you recall, the intent back to 1962 was for the youth to use. So I would just encourage you to consider that wholeheartedly before the county makes the decision for the fate of the building and completely, permanently takes that away from the youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella.
I have no further public comment.
Okay. Well, both Mary and Ella, I appreciate you coming from the scouting perspective because when I was younger, I was a brownie and then kind of evolved into Girl Scouts. And then when my daughter was born and of age, I remember showing up as a den mother and helping out with the meeting or brownie meetings there as well. And so I'm firmly aware of the scouting history. That goes back 50 years from my perspective, and so I totally relate to that. In terms of the VFW, I like that there's an option, that there's an interest, but I really want to make sure that the county maintains the purpose in which the building was donated to the county, and that we kind of maintain that, because both speakers are correct. There is no place for them to meet other than if they go to, a pizza place, somebody's private home. That doesn't make it conducive to having a good meeting with any kind of crafts that might be going on. But I have seen that building go into disrepair over the decades since I became an adult. And it's sad to find out that the disrepair happened while in the county control of maintenance. Right? It really is. It's a shame that we lost that relationship with Margaret, to where we couldn't maintain that working relationship. But when I did see this on the agenda, I got a little bit kind of teary-eyed to see that, possibly, to maybe dispose of it. And I'm like, ooh, I wasn't interested. The Rosa Morada one kind of triggered something on me, but this one was more of an emotional reaction that I had with this one. So I would hope the county is going to keep it in mind and for the use of the purpose in which it was originally intended, and given over to the county for control. I'll go ahead and stop talking, but you go ahead and if you have any comments, Supervisor Sotelo.
Thank you. So I didn't have the privilege of attending it as a Girl Scout. I was a brownie as well. I just lived in San Juan Bautista, so we did things a little differently there. But I have a lot of history using that building. I was with Little League for years, and we had sign-ups, we had meetings, we used it all the time. And I do think that there is a huge lack of buildings just in general for our organizations, for our youth groups to use. And I think that, if we're not committed to investing in our youth, it's sad. And as a mom, investing in our youth is incredibly important to me. And I think that it's important. I feel like we're at this pivotal point right now where I've heard of a few different things. Some are not even county related at all, but buildings that were gifted to local government or different groups, and some of that history is starting to kind of go away because so much time has passed. And so one of my original questions was going to be, and thank you, Mary, for coming up and speaking to it, what was the original intent, and who was Bertha Briggs? And I apologize for not knowing that, but I do think it's really important that as we start to make decisions that make sense for where we are today, that we don't lose sight of the history and what the original intent was for buildings and properties and things of that sort. I also understand that this is a dilapidated building. It really is, and it's not, it is, unfortunately, went for a long time with probably not the repairs that it needed. And now it has sat for, I don't know, actually, that is a question I have. When was this building red tagged? When was the last time we were able to use it? Do you know that, Steve?
Approximately, so I started working for the county in the summer of 2021, and the chief building official at the time had just mentioned how he had red tagged it. I guess there was a fire in the back, and so he went to kind of assess the building with some other folks, and they found a lot of other issues, mostly ADA compliance in the HVAC system. Prior to that, I'm not sure how well or not the county is maintaining the building, but so somewhere slightly before summer of 2021, it was red tagged, and that's where it's sat since.
Okay. Yeah, basically, I mean, 2021 is pretty much, so it's been sitting for 3-4 years now. Which I know we were all in kind of crisis mode with COVID too, and so that interrupted our lives tremendously. But I do think we need to get back to having some place for the different youth and organizations. However, I do understand, like I said, our need. We are going to be having the library. And I don't know that this is appropriate, and so please stop me if it's not appropriate. Slap me on the hand. But I'm just curious, from the people that gave public comment, are you open to revitalizing that property, possibly, with a new building, or are you adamant that the existing building needs to remain? Do you have any?
Can
Do
you
you
come
wanna
up to
come
the
to the
mic,
podium?
just so that the public is part of the conversation? Well, they're privy to the conversation, not part of it.
So, in my opinion, Mary told me not to mention, we have an endowment and there is money available, private money. I am only, that's completely my comment. It has not been run by or vetted by the committee at all. But maybe in the future, if we were invited to work together, we could have a contribution to either a new building or whatever. Again, that's just me speaking. I'm not speaking on behalf of the committee at this point. But to answer your question, new building, old building, rehab, it doesn't matter. The point is that we just need a space, and we need to be acknowledged as users of that building for the original intent of it.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. That's very helpful. Mary, go ahead. I'm sorry, B.
Okay, no, it's okay. Ella would, or Mary, whomever can answer this. When you say users of that building, would you be the primary or sole users of that building? Because I like the fact that it was open up to both Scouts, both Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts.
Brave,
Yeah, all the so just the youth
It's a
building.
youth center, that's what
Okay.
it was. The fire that eventually red tagged it was not in the building. It was outside the building in a cover that the county had put up. I want to point out that there are at least 3 Eagle Scout projects there, and Eagle Scout projects are very, very involved.
Yes.
They did 3 of those. That concrete slab was actually a basketball court. The awning in the back of the building was an awning that was put up by a Boy Scout and his troop, and then a lot of landscaping. The trees remained, but it wasn't maintained with the bushes and everything that made it beautiful. And we do have Eagle Scout projects coming up all the time. We just redid a part of the park at Park Hill as the Eagle Scout project. So those kinds of projects could be done. And we could look at the endowment that we have and follow it through the law for what it was intended. And if we can make this be a part of that intention, we could see if we could pitch in some money.
So what you're thinking, Penny's gotta.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sorry. So just to make sure that we understand, again, it's, the county owns the property now, and that if we could maybe do some shared services if they were able to help with part of the building. I think the intent for us as the county is we're also looking at, the space of putting the library there temporarily. Because what we have also looked at is if we have to move the library somewhere, we may have to lease land, and the purpose of it was we wouldn't have to lease that because we already own it. Now, once we fulfill that piece, then what would that building be used for? I think we could absolutely look at like a kind of a co-tenant kind of thing, you know, where maybe they lease it back, they lease part of it for their services, for their meetings and things like that, and then we can also look at it if we need any other potential uses for county staff in places, because as you both are aware, we have very limited space, very limited ways we can expand. So that's one of the reasons why we looked at facilities, is like, what do we own and where can we put things? I think realistically, rehabbing that building is probably not feasible. Putting a new modular type of building, we'd call it the new improved Briggs, obviously. And I think the intent would be for the county is that would be a potential shared space for the community as well. I think
After the library uses it then?
Yes.
So it would be exclusive
Yeah.
to the library during the tenure that you needed it for the library staff, but then once the library no longer needed it, it would then go to potentially a shared use facility?
We could look at putting like part of it would be for community, where the library would be home, you know, house the books or whatever thing that we're using. Probably some offices, so then the scouts or whoever would be using it would have maybe some private offices. Again, we have other small departments. We have our veteran services that right now we're using the memorial building. We could always put them there. Veterans of Foreign Wars, we can always have an office there. I think there's big potential of what the community could be used for in the future. I think the plan was look at the library, get that set up, and then what would look like for afterwards.
So I would love to see it as a shared space for the community. I think that was the original intent. And so I would love to just see it get back to use. Like, it's sitting there, red tagged, isn't benefiting anybody. And there's such a great need. I really, I like the component of the VFW Veteran Services being a part of it. It is Vets Memorial Park, and so I think that if we could come up with a way to have this community hub, the kind of this space that could be utilized, and so as we go out to possibly purchase a portable or whatever
Modular,
it is,
yeah.
modular, but really having some, maybe working with Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, the VFW, in kind of trying to figure, okay, the immediate, we need to fix this problem of where do we put the library in the interim, but that's going to be a short interim period. It's going to go by really quick, and I think that there probably could be usage of that building at the same time from groups. And I know that there are so many groups that are doing so many wonderful things in this community, but need spaces to have a board meeting or sign-ups for whatever, and it gets really expensive when you have to rent a space, or you know, you're going to go have it at a pizza place, but then you're kind of obligated to buy some pizza and some drinks and different things. So I think this is so needed in this community, having kind of this community hub. My question would be, Steve, to you, and I'm going to kind of, I sit on the Vets Park Commission as well, so this is probably a Vets Park Commission question, but I know that we talked about it briefly. There are some sheds out there. We're talking about Rosa Murata, and I heard possible facilities for storage. Could we possibly take and put some of our storage facilities potentially, and this is me, I'm talking off the top of my head, so there's not a lot of forethought here. I'm just trying to, taking some of the storage facility, things that we have stored out there, because I think we identified at our last meeting, those belong to the county. They don't belong to the organizations that are utilizing the field. So they don't belong to Babe Ruth, they don't belong to Little League. It's not like their mowers and stuff are in there. It is our county facilities. The sheds are pretty, we didn't even really know what was in them or what their purposes were. And I think now we're kind of saying, oh, they're kind of storage, they're kind of unsightly. Is there any possibility that we could put in like 2 modulars potentially? I mean, you know what I mean? Where we could take and really utilize that space. Like, it's kind of, it's Vets Memorial Park. I feel like there's so much activity going on there year round, whether it's youth or adult. There's obviously such a need for board meetings and signups and Boy Scout and Girl Scout meetings and gatherings that and even locations to have a birthday party, right? Like some people were lucky enough and you have space at your home or in your yard, but a lot of people don't have that. And so could it be a potential that, you know, maybe one of these facilities is something that is looked at more of a revenue source for the county, where the other is more of a kind of public good for the community? I think that was one of the really neat things about the Bertha Briggs building was that it was free of charge, right? And so, I think that if we could have kind of maybe this public-private partnership where maybe we could raise some funds to build this and to have it be a real community thing. But obviously I know revenue is a real issue in this county. And so I just wonder if potentially, like one could be looked at more of kind of your Vets Park where you're renting a spot. Maybe one could be you're renting it for like a facility. Facility rentals are crazy expensive. So if it was somewhat a reasonable rent, but maybe it could at least cover kind of the cost. I don't know. I'm just thinking, I'm just trying to brainstorm out loud, but I recognize there's a huge, huge need in this community. And anything that we can do to help provide space and give more kids an affordable option. Because at the end of the day, if these organizations have to pay to have their meetings or whatever it is there, then in turn, the people that are going to pay for it are the kids that are participating in these programs. And I want to keep things as affordable as we can. Give every child here opportunities, whether it's participating in Scouts or in a sport league or an art class potentially, whatever it is, or having wonderful library facilities. We need to invest in our youth here. And so just my 2 cents about, I don't know how we do this, but I know we can, especially if we have the community support. I want it all.
I would agree with that. I want it all too. And I want to make sure that the community has access to this site. My only concern is, as Supervisor Satel said, is the revenue, the resources, and not even generating revenue for that, but the initial expenditure to get the modulars to, we're obviously not going to renovate the building. It sounds like it's just cost prohibitive to be able to do that. I'm more concerned about the ADA aspect, that we're not putting ourselves in any kind of liability situation if we don't address that for whatever purpose it's going to be used for. I know we need to do that. I'm just kind of concerned about the cost and what are we expecting of the entities in the community to kind of buy into, and I say buy into this. But I would like to make sure that the county keeps it for a shared public use. That's my priority. And I don't want to consider it a site for staff at this point because that problem exists, but so does the dishoused, organizations that have been using it previously. So I would like to keep the community focus be the primary focus, that it stays, because that was the purpose in which we obtained the property in the first place, was under those circumstances. And I don't want to lose it. And I'll just give you for example, since you brought up the Vets Park. The Vets Memorial Park was an item that was donated to the county, and it has changed hands in terms of who's monitoring it, who's managing it, who's taking care of it, to where it's become very convoluted as to who can use it, when it can be used, who do they have to go through to use it. I just want to make sure we don't make that same mistake with the Bertha Briggs building. So let's just make sure we're clear, and that the purpose is that it is for public use, combined use, however we're going to do it. But that, for me, I would hope it would stay as a facility that's available to the public, whether it's Scouts, VFW, whomever. But they would keep that in mind. Go ahead.
So just to clarify, would you be open to it being kind of the interim, potential interim location of the library for a short period of time? And while it's being used as a library, maybe that's where it's kind of that shared county and community, I think there still would be space potentially for the community to utilize it for different meetings and things, but
Really gonna be up to you, because, as you know, I won't be a supervisor beyond 2025. And so that would be something that you'd have to advocate with whomever else would be on, sitting on this committee with you. But by all means, the library needs to go somewhere, and there's a concern that I have that someone on the board, I will leave that person's name out of it, but they had said the potential for closing down the library if we didn't have the financial ability to be able to house them. And for me, that is not an option whatsoever. And so,
And I think that's the whole thing, is that we're looking at the cost, because if we have to relocate the library somewhere, there's a cost to that. Why don't we use the land or potentially build on something that we could put them temporarily, and then that could be shifted over to more of a community.
if we did the modulars, what time frame are we looking at in order, say we had the approval of the board today, when would we see a building there in place, ready to be utilized by whether it be library staff or the public? What time frame are we looking at?
I think that's more of a Steve question, but.
Yeah, so a couple things you have to consider, and funding, especially right now, I've been into some of the situations we have with negotiations with other agencies, but the county this year specifically, funding is a big issue, right? And so VFW has suggested, that they could go after grants and rehab this site, rehab the building, rebuild the building, take your pick. I don't know if they've vetted that out, but that's how they approached us. And that's a big factor. And then perhaps if the Scouts or another agency could use their endowments for some of the site work, that would be wonderful. But I guess what I'm getting at is, and CEOs, I think, still determining how much we're going to get as an insurance compensation for some of the relocations and the fire at the courthouse. So, if you base let's just assume the county does not have funding right now for this. Really, what it boils down to is the VFW, could rehab the building and hopefully rebuild that structure, leave some room for library staff as part of the lease, and so it'd probably have to be a larger structure, and we could put in with the library staff. They could, hopefully we could maybe have a temporary library portable for library uses also on the site. And then in the evenings and weekends, we would just make part of the lease with VFW that youth and other organizations would have access to the building in the evenings and the weekends. So I think that's a lot of times when those folks meet anyways. So that's how perhaps it could work out. If the county had $1 million today, I don't know, it'd be, for a portable building, with our current experience on tiny homes up on the hill, the current experience, it's taken about 6 months to go from design to buildings being placed on site, which actually started yesterday. We actually have 9 of the 11 new homes on the site up at the Migrant Center. So that whole process took about 6 months, to answer your question. So from start to finish, and maybe we have to throw in a couple extra months for the architect to be involved on the site. So maybe it's 8 months if we were to do kind of a portable prefab type of building. They're permanent buildings, but like a prefab type of building. That process up at the Migrant Center for phase 2 has taken about 8 months total.
Because we have a limited time frame in which we need to relocate staff, and so that's where I'm looking at too, if we can even do it. Obviously, we're not going to have the answer today here for this, but I would hope that we are united in directing staff to look at all the options, whether it be, VFW, Scouting, any other entity that has used the building, to kind of continue the conversations going on with them, and hopefully we can come back to this board with some sort of recommendation, rather than just throwing all these ideas out on, in the air. Yes.
do we have any kind of idea of what the modular would possibly cost?
Well, for 800 square feet, those
I'm
are.
thinking way bigger than
I know,
800.
just type.
Okay.
Baby steps.
I'm just, it's costing us roughly 250,000 for a prefab 800 square foot building. So you double that to 1,600, which would be larger than the current facility, which is only 1,200 square feet. So double that. I'm just, these are ballpark costs.
Yeah.
So that takes you to $500,000. And then you have your site prep and whatnot. So it'd probably be close to $1 million to get 1,600 square feet back on the site with a prefab building. To answer your question.
Well, and this is where I think public-private partnership is ideal, right? Because it costs government so much to build. I mean, it's crazy to me to think $250,000 for 800 square feet. Like, that just seems crazy to me.
And the prevailing wage is a big part of it. So if VFW or the scouts aren't held to prevailing wages, you'll knock off at least 30% right off the top immediately. I don't know what their requirements are regarding prevailing wages, but it's a good point.
Do you think, is there enough room on that property? And I apologize, I don't know, but is there enough room on that property to leave the existing building where, potentially you could have the VFW or Boy Scouts or whoever go through it and see, is that something that maybe they would want to invest and rehab it? Because they obviously can do it for a lot less than we can. But at the same time, is there enough room on that property where we could bring in possibly a modular to put the library in the interim? And then once we are done with the library, there essentially would be 2 spaces there that could be utilized for public use.
So the answer is maybe. We could look at it. I'd have to talk to the library staff and see what they're envisioning when they're temporarily relocated. How much do they want staff, or they want staff plus an area for books and check out and things, right? Because if they want both of those activities to occur, it'd be pretty constrained. So we'll have to coordinate with staff to see. This is just like Supervisor Gonzalez said, we're just starting to have this discussion. It's great that the public's here to provide some historical content and input so that we can make sure that the public and we have use of the building. So we'll look into that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm really supportive of just doing whatever we can to get the space usable again for the community. And so
do you have enough direction then? Okay. So,
now, if the Boy Scouts or VFW wanted to tour that building, just to kind of start to wrap their heads around some of this, and is that acceptable?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll reach out to the gentleman that reached out to CAO and I and ask him if he wants to have that tour. I'm sure he will. And as well as a couple of folks here, well, they're probably pretty familiar.
Well, and it was mentioned that they still thought they had stuff inside of it, and I don't know if the doors have just been locked and we haven't done anything, but if maybe they have the opportunity to get whatever in there that belongs to them and means something to them, they have the ability to grab that stuff as well.
Absolutely.
I think that was because it got gated, correct? It was why you couldn't gain entry? Okay. It's boarded up, it's really boarded up. Okay.
I believe Manny from the library, Manny Gonzalez, would like to say something about this.
Sorry, I didn't acknowledge you, Manny.
You gotta wave those hands way up in the air.
I look to nodding heads, and if the head is indicating they want attention, then I normally give it. You didn't give me that visual clue, sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Supervisor, for allowing me to speak. I think it's a great idea. I mean, some of this is very great, but one of the things that when Austin presented earlier, we're looking at our inventory of books, because I think moving a lot of books doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, it doesn't.
And the biggest use that we see at the library right now are computer areas for people to come in and use computers. So that'll be probably the biggest issue that we're going to look at when we move staff. And providing the staff support for that. So, I think that doing a joint use at that during the day and at night may not work for now. But I think looking at it, once the library moves out, I think definitely, because again, we're gonna put a lot of equipment and stuff in there, and keeping track of all that stuff is gonna be something that we're gonna be really careful with. But I think that, you know, providing opportunities for youth is, that's part of the library. That's one of the reasons we wanna make sure that we provide access to computers, because the kids area that we have now is always full of kids with coming in to use a computer. So we need areas where kids can come in and have that opportunity. So again, we're not probably gonna move a lot of books because a lot of it is going to virtual, moving forward. So having access to the system itself is gonna be also very important. I just wanted to.
Thank you, Manny. Okay. So then I guess that would take us to the next item, 5.4, because you said you had enough direction on the Briggs building.
That's correct.
What do you want to tell us about 5.4? I'm kind of afraid of this topic now.
So don't be afraid. Okay. So 5.4, receive, review information on county-owned property, provide staff direction if desired. So I'm going to put the link, if folks in the room can bring the website up that's being shown on the computer laptop here. Okay. So,
What is the website link that you're referring to?
oh, you bet. Let me escape out of this.
You just mentioned it, so I was going to jot it down at the same time. So.
Yeah, I'll send this to you. Our GIS manager, he just created this for this meeting, and because he's amazing and does these type of things very quickly. So I'll send the presentation, so you don't have to write down the web link. I'll just email you the two supervisors here. There's our presentation. Okay, so what this is our GIS department has put together this link for our use to show all the county-owned property. There might be a couple of, just based on the amount of time you have, there might be a couple of properties in South County that are down there, like Pinoche and New Iberia, that we also might own, just FYI. So we just focus somewhat near Hollister itself, just FYI. So there might be some couple in Aromas, a few down south in Pinoche, but
So this will not be a comprehensive list.
we'll see. I'll pan around and see, but that's what we discussed on when I talked to Renee, our GS manager, was, you know, usable property nearby for perhaps staffing or homeless encampment needs that we have a whole bunch of. We need some property for some of the uses for storing homeless encampment property, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But, so if you click this link that I'll email to you two separately. So there's a county, and actually, let me just look this because I'm curious. It looks like there are some of these properties in South County, so and down by the reservoir. So it might be comprehensive, but let's just, because this was a very rapid exercise, I'm going to focus in. So just to give you a bearing, here is properties are shown in red. Our landfill is one of the largest properties here. We own the landfill site and south of the landfill site. And let's see, just for context, so you can see where we're at, I'll go to Rosa Morada. And let's go up here a bit. There's a Rosa Morada site there. So when you click on this link, and there's also a spreadsheet that accompanies the link that provides more information and just acreages and APN numbers and fun stuff like that. And let's see, where are we today? We're down here on 4th Street in this building right here. So pertinent to this discussion, we're going to be talking about Buena Vista Road property that the county owns, and I'll give you some more details in a moment. I just want to show you this GIS link that we have. So the county owns a piece of property. I'll give you the details in a moment. At the outskirts of the city limits, off of Buena Vista as you're heading out towards Wright Road and 156 out of town. So we have this fun reverse curve. We need to add some speed bumps. soon, but we own this property. It's essentially vacant. I'll show you some actual photos of this property in a moment. So that's one of the properties we're going to discuss. Another property is off of Chapel Road near the airport. This is another piece of property that we own, and currently, you can see, okay, the upper left corner parcel of the property, RMA is working with HHSA. We're actually rehabbing one home that has 3 bedrooms, and it's going to be used for transitional housing. We're also going to rehab a 1 or 2 bedroom home also on this site in the northwest corner. So that area is kind of taken up, but there's 3+ acres, which I'll go through in more detail in a moment, to the right, that the county owns, that we previously were going to go for a grant. It was going to cost $25 million to rehab the site and add some transitional, like a big apartment complex for transitional housing. Unfortunately, the state grant only provided about $12 million of the $25 million, so we decided not to pursue that grant. But it's a large piece of property, it's 3+ acres. I'll show you in a moment that the county owns there. And maybe I'll just pause there and I'll go to the next slides. Just want to kind of show you there's other random property just kind of sprinkled around the county. But interesting, you can, once you have a moment to look at that. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, Buena Vista, we were just talking about 6.3 acres. It's essentially vacant. It's owned by the county. It's general plan is ag. It's zoned ag. There are no structures on there today, and it's one of the locations that was being considered to place portable units for storing homeless encampment materials. However, as you'll hear a little bit later when we have that presentation, I believe on the 12th, to the full board, we think it might be better for a lot of reasons to place some storage units on Flynn Road, which we own near the jail, because we basically just need some somewhat secure storage areas where folks that have their belongings temporarily relocated, they need we need storage units to place some of those items. I won't go into more detail, but we were considering using Buena Vista for that use. However, we're kind of, that committee team, I should say, is leaning towards having that storage of those personal items at the jail, just in some storage units. So a lot of property at the jail.
Okay, and that property too, I know, during my lifetime, I knew the family that owned it. So I do know there's running water on there, there's sewer. They're already in place because of the previous building that used to live there. It was a house, it was a residential house.
100%, yeah, we saw that as well.
And so that's a plus for us. I'm sorry? This is Buena Vista.
The Buena Vista site.
Yeah, Buena Vista.
Yeah,
We're using Flynn for the storage. And Flynn, we won't need water or sewer for the storage units.
Correct, yeah. So, that's correct. So, great point. There is water on the site. I didn't know there was sewer. I did know there was a previous structure back in the day, so it makes sense there's sewer there as well, or perhaps a leach field. So yeah, so I'll show you some pictures here in a moment. So this is, let's see if you're looking, I can't see my picture. So if you're driving out of town and looking towards the left driver's side of the car, you'll see this, and we have a lot of folks that tend to not pay attention to where they're going, and they continue to drive through our fence. So and this is the site. One of the nice things about this site, I guess at one point there was just a lot of trash and debris on the site, but Cheer organization came onto the site probably after the residents you mentioned had vacated the site. I guess there was 1.5 feet of just trash and debris, and the Cheer group just completely cleaned it out. So it's pretty much an open, vacant site today. And I'm going to pause there, but that's a site that has been discussed to be used as affordable housing projects, to be teamed with the city, or if we could find an affordable housing developer, they could use the site as well. We, the county, can use the site, but we just wanted to bring it to the facilities ad hoc attention that it's an open, vacant site just outside of city limits. And then
Steve, how did we acquire that property? Do you know?
I do not know how we acquired the property. I do not.
I would imagine probably through some sort of condemnation process because the house did fall into total disrepair. It was a husband and wife that owned the property, gave it to their daughter, and she just let it go to. It was a really bad place. It was disgusting, the mess. And so I would imagine Herman did a great job by doing the work he did to clear the site up.
So, and so currently it's zoned as ag productive, but it's not being farmed currently right now?
Correct. Yes,
Is there
yeah.
an opportunity for us to possibly lease it out or somebody to farm it as we're figuring out what we want to do with it, so that it's not just sitting as a empty, I mean, I'm just trying to think, how can we collect a little bit of revenue, and it's ag productive, so we'd love to see. I don't know if it's viable or not. I'm just going off of it.
I know the
zoning.
neighbor next door has a little small farm, and at one point the county were in talks with him about switching, the properties, because we wanted one that was more contiguous to the city limits. I mean, I can't remember what conversation that was involving, but I do remember that conversation.
Mhm.
So there's a farmer that his farm's right next door to it,
Yeah, so the answer is yes. I mean, we're not obviously using it this time, so it makes sense if we want to lease it, I should say, for ag farming opportunities. So it makes sense. So, let's see, jumping over to Chapel Road. The arrow and circle, so the county actually owns property in Hiking and a few smaller parcels adjacent to it. The larger property is 3.4 acres, and that's the property we previously were considering for an affordable housing type of grant project. Now, it should be noted that this is in the city limits, so it's City of Hollister jurisdiction. I'm going to show you what the city envisions for this and talk about that a little bit. So, this is the old 2005 general plan, and I've seen various drafts of the new city general plan, but the 2005 general plan, they call this the North Gateway Commercial Area, shown in pink. I left the green circle there because that's our property. So, the previous general plan envisioned it as kind of a nice commercial area. I don't know if that's still going to be the case, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I have had one brief conversation with the city manager about teaming on an affordable housing type of project and for that area, because of that previous grant exercise where we realized we were about $10 million short based on what the state would provide with the grant. And he seemed amenable to that, but that's obviously a big process on what we want to do with that property. And in the meantime, on the two parcels on the left, for the list of 890 and 943, we're using that. We're not as using the property in the back. It could be for extra parking for those facilities or whatnot, but the 3.4 acre parcel is definitely a good, usable, viable piece of property to be utilized for the county and or teaming the project with the city. So that's that.
Now, as you're presenting these to us, you're presenting them just right now as options for some future use, but you're not telling us what the future use is going to be at this point.
100%.
Right?
100%.
Okay.
And so what I did on this next slide, I want to show you the two buildings that we're currently rehabbing next to the 3.4, 3.4 acres in yellow. But the two buildings on the left, we're actually rehabilitating and utilizing those. The property adjacent and below them, next to Highway 25, there is no current use for that, but we own that property as well. It's just it could be parking for the larger parcel, could be a lot of different things, but just wanted to throw that out there. But there are three separate parcels that the county owns. So that's that. That's the large parcel. That's when weed abatement has occurred. So okay, I'll pause there. So just wanted to have us all aware of some larger parcels that the county owns that we're not currently using. So besides the Bertha Briggs site, it sounds like there's some direction there, which is wonderful. We also have the Buena Vista site and the Chappelle property, just so the facilities ad hoc is aware of them, and I'll pause there.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this item?
If you'd like to make a comment, please press, well, Mr. Gibson will make a comment in chambers, and on Zoom, please press star 9 on the raised hand icon.
Good afternoon, Chair and other member of the committee. My thought with the Buena Vista property is there a well, and if so, is it ag or residential? Because you're not gonna be able to lease it out for ag if it's not an ag well, because it just won't produce the water. So I would check to see what the well type is and if it's functioning. Because if you need a new pump, that's gonna be $30,000-$40,000 or more, depending on the size needed. So that would be the first step, is to determine the type of well. That's it.
Thank you.
I have no other public comment.
I'm gonna just kind of consider this, information that you're reporting to us, that it's not requiring any kind of reportable action. But in terms of the future use, I do like the idea that, the city might be amenable to doing some sort of joint affordable housing. I was disappointed when I discovered that the grant that we were looking for that apartment complex, fell through, because I was really hopeful that that was gonna be able to hit some of our numbers under, the affordable housing, but that didn't. But it'd be great if you can continue those conversations with the city to see if that's something that we can achieve together. So that'd be a great joint, project to work on.
Will do.
So I guess we'll go ahead and carry on to whatever else you want to share with us, Steve.
I think, because we've covered item 5.5, one little, just timeline-wise, with the library cleaning out and whatnot, it's great, we're starting to discuss that now. We do have to relocate library staff by February of 2026, so that we can start the library expansion and all those good fun things. So it's great that we're starting to have those discussions now about weeding out materials and things. And I think that's all I had.
Okay. Thank you. All right, if no further questions, then I'll take a motion to adjourn then.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you for coming out and participating in the meeting.